Now back in our little project, the Monster Killer project, let's simulate such a problem. We do get some user input here actually. We get that entered value, and I already do some validation here. We check whether what the user entered can be used as a maximum life, so if it's bigger than 0 and if it is a number to begin with after converting it to a number. Now, the kind of sad thing here, in quotes, because it's actually good, of course, is that parseInt doesn't throw an error if the user enters something invalid. In other programming languages, that could be the case, but JavaScript is really forgiving here, and if you enter something that can't be converted to an integer or to a number here, well, then you don't get an error, you don't get a system error that crashes your script, but instead parseInt generates this NaN value, which we check for with isNaN. So this doesn't really produce an error, but here to continue and show you try catch, I want to have a real error. And the good thing is we can create and throw our own errors. And whilst it might sound strange that you want to do that in your code, you have to keep in mind that with JavaScript you can write very big applications spanning across multiple files, and indeed you might want to throw an error in some parts of your application so that you can use these official error management tools to handle that error instead of having to write a bunch of if statements in a couple of different places of your code. So especially in bigger applications, it's quite common that you throw your own errors in some parts of it. And here we will throw our own error so that we can practice with try catch. In other situations, which we'll see later in the course, for example, when communicating to a server, you will automatically get an error. So JavaScript or the browser will automatically throw an error if things go wrong. Here for this user input, this kind of unfortunately isn't the case, so we'll do it on our own. So how can we do it on our own? Well, let's first of all move this logic here where we get that entered value into a function. So I'll cut that and then maybe here add a new function, which I'll name get max life values. And in here I get that entered value and I try to parse it as an integer. And then here I'll take that if check and put it in here to validate what the user entered. But then here I'll not set chosen max life to 100 if this is not valid. Instead, I will change this to be a constant, which I'll name parsed value, something like this. We'll need that in a second. And then outside of that function here, I will add that chosen max life variable, which I'll for now set equal to get max life values. So I will call the function here, and in that function I want to return the parsed value here in the end. That's the idea. But in this if statement, if we have an invalid value, then I will not return 100 as a fallback value, which we of course could do. But in order to see how you handle errors, I will use another keyword in JavaScript, which is the throw keyword, which throws a new error. And an error can be anything. You can throw a number as an error, a string, or an object. And here I'll throw an object with a message property. That's kind of the convention. Most errors are objects that have a message property, where I say invalid user input, not a number, something like that. So now we throw our own error here. And the result of that is that if we go back to our application, and we open the developer tools here and I reload and I enter a valid value, then I got a different error, cannot access chosen max life before initialization. Yes, because here, of course, I should, in my if condition here, I should check parsed value, not chosen max life. Since I changed it here, we should change it here as well. So that was not what I wanted to show you. Let's reload. If I enter 100 instead, this works as before. But if we now reload and I enter a high there, which can't be converted to a number, we now get our own custom error thrown here. You see, this is just an error with which is our object in the end with that message. But it's marked as red because this indeed is now really an error. And it stops our script execution therefore. So pressing these buttons doesn't do anything. So we crashed our script. Again, you might want to do that on your own in more complex scripts so that you can use the error handling mechanism in different parts of it. Here, I'm mostly doing it so that we can now practice with try catch, because you will later also work with other things like network requests, where JavaScript itself will throw errors, and therefore you need to be prepared to handle such errors. So, how do we use try catch?